Ms. Carolyn Jacobs, our National Alumni President. Madam Jacobs. My home chapter, the North Carolina chapter president, is Linda Williams. Thank you, Linda, for being here. My wife says I always find an opportunity to come to Richmond and beginning to believe her. But I was greeted yesterday as I arrived into the city of Richmond properly on the highway by Sydney and Sevilla Parker. Sydney and Sevilla, it was good to see you guys. It was great to see you when I saw you yesterday. I'd finally like to say, before I do, just a few brief words for what I would position to be the importance of supporting our HBCUs and supporting Virginia Union. To thank you, the individuals who came today to spend your time, your money, your efforts, your financial contributions to help our students. You are truly investors in the next generation. It is your dollars, it is your time, it is your efforts that go to make this a fine university that provides an avenue to the future. Never doubt, never fear, never quench when you're giving your dollars. Because as you can see, the musician who's here just a few moments ago, and our Miss Virginia Union University, they are our future. And our future is bright. Please don't have anyone tell you anything different. So with that is a brief introduction, and I understand I'm standing between you, door prizes, the auction, and this cheesecake that is really the highlight of today. I just want to briefly talk about the importance and role of supporting our schools, where we are now, and kind of how do we position ourselves to get through the political climate we're in, and the financial problems that we face sometimes for our small private institutions. We start with knowing as a foundation the history of HBCU. Our history is nothing but extraordinary. We were born of a legacy of slavery, racism, oppression, and then motivated in the era of Jim Crow. The mere survival of our private small HBCUs over the past 150 years is short of nothing but a miracle. Although we have lost 100 HBCUs between 1865 and 1965, we saw the first round of the modern-day closures of Bishop College in Texas in 1988, and then most recently with our sister school, St. Paul's College in Lawrenceville, Virginia. Think about the history of our school. Born in the aftermath of the Civil War and Reconstruction, and initiated by the Freedmen's Bureau through many religious institutions. The Episcopalians, the Quakers, the Methodists, the African Methodist Episcopalians, the CME, the Protestants, and of course, the Baptists. Thank God for the Baptists. Private institutions who are celebrating their 150th year, like Virginia Union did 2 years ago, or in the midst of celebrating their 150th anniversaries now, like Johnson C. Smith, Howard University, and my school, St. Augustine University, have struggled to prosper. We have struggled to prosper post Brown v. the Board of Education in 1954, which was supposed to level the playing field and open the doors. The doors failed to swing open, the link failed to follow. What happened became a limited number of students of African American descent were able to go to predominantly white schools in the late 60s, early 70s. We saw the opening of the gates or the doors of admission in the 80s. And as those doors opened in the 80s for African Americans to go to the predominantly white schools, we saw the enrollment at our HBCUs start to slowly decline. At that time, in the mid-80s, became what I call the first seeds of doubt. The first seeds of doubt were planted about the relevance and significance of HBCUs. The conversation began, if individuals can go to the larger institutions and get great education, why do we need smaller institutions for our students? when the conversation started, we should have pivoted that conversation, because it is not about the relevance of HBCUs or smaller private universities. It is about the value proposition that these schools offer. It is about the benefit of the aftermarket product, our students, that we give to society. In support of the very schools that offer an opportunity should have been the very schools that were supported. But we saw the federal dollars decline, the state dollars decline, and then we moved into an era where the public policy started to dictate the rules of financial aid, which affected our students negatively. While all this was going on, HBCUs and small private colleges still continued to strive. Low budgets, deferred maintenance, small endowments, we still continue to strive. Strive to the point where HBCUs comprise 3% of the 2- and 4-year institutions in America, but enroll 10% of the African American graduates. They graduate 18% of the bachelor's degree holders and 25% of all STEM bachelor's degree earners, at a cost that is roughly 30% less than like private institutions. With these statistics in mind, we still have to argue our value proposition. We found ourselves in the midst of 3 policy changes that affect all of our financial pocketbooks that we still deal with today. These 3 educational policy changes affected Parent Plus loan requirements, Pell Grant restrictions, and the elimination, if not strong reduction, of state and private financial aid. These 3 policies came down the pipe at the worst time in the history of this country. They came down the pipe after we had the home mortgage bubble, the downturn in our auto industry, the housing market explosion, and the job market implosion. Many of the families that support our students found themselves in a house that was being foreclosed on, a job that didn't exist, or nowhere to go with a student in school. These 3 policy changes that didn't occur during the summer of the year 2010 actually occurred in the fall while the students were enrolled in school. So when our students thought that their bills were straight, as we like to say, and they were enrolled in classes to move forward, there were conversations all over the United States, and especially in our HBCU community, in the business office, in the financial aid office, in the registrar's office, telling these students that there was a small gap that they now had to fill because their parents were denied for the Parent Plus loan. The Parent Plus loan has become the financial aid package of the 1990s, 2000, and 2001. Gone are many of the federal programs that we all knew, BEOG, SEOG. Those programs left long ago. That pivot, that educational policy decision, not only affected the students, who found some 340,000 students across the United States in the fall of 2010 had to withdraw from school to go home, but it affected 63,000 students in all HBCUs across the country. But it also affected somewhere that is innocent and silent to most, but if you are a member of the Board of Trustees, a member of the cabinet, or you work at a university, you realize that that income was already considered. It was already counted, and now you didn't have it. So the financial pressure now came on the university. This financial challenge was placed on the university by the federal policy change. As a result of that change, many universities had to re-engineer themselves extremely quickly and become more nimble to bring our students back into the fold in enrollment and start to balance our books. One of the major ways that many private institutions did that was donors like yourself. We reached out to our alums, we reached out to our corporate partners, we reached out to our stakeholders in the community and explained the problem and the value proposition. And many of you stepped up to the plate, so I'd like you to give yourselves one more hand. But we know that you cannot do this alone. To have a framework that moves our universities forward in the next millennium so that we're around for another 100 years takes a strong undergirding of 4 communities. There's a role for the president, there's a role for the board of trustees, there's a role for faculty and staff, and then there's a role for alums and our contributors. I will speak briefly on each because I know you want to get to this case. The role of the president is probably the toughest job in America. You're constantly under the microscope of inspection. Every decision is subject to second guessing Monday morning quarterbacking. And those who raise their hands and say, I do, should gain the support of the alumni and faculty far and near. We have to find a way to settle our differences internally and not externally. We have to find a way to support our presidents so that they can work with our Office of Sponsored Research and Programs and Institutional Advancement. These offices must be fully staffed, trained in external grant